Hello, welcome to the Bearded Tits podcast, hosted by me, Jack Perks. Professionally, I'm a wildlife cameraman, but I dabble in podcasting, and each Tuesday we release an episode as I have a chat with scientists, artists, filmmakers, and passionate people all about nature in a light-hearted and certainly not serious way. Hello and welcome to the Bearded Tits podcast. Now my guest today is Laura Turner. I've known Laura for a number of years. She's a filmmaker. We've worked together on lots of projects, and she's probably best known for being the brainchild behind the Wildlife Garden Project, which is a YouTube series, and you can see loads of videos about wildlife gardening. Now, as well as being a keen wildlife gardener, she also owns a cat. So I thought she was the perfect person to talk to about how can gardeners keep cats out of their garden, and if you're a cat owner, what can you do to stop or ideally limit the damage cats do to the wider environment. So we have a good chat about that. Now, many of you will know that the only way we make money on the podcast is via buymeacoffee.com. There's a link in the description. If you can donate, that's absolutely brilliant. We are trying to raise money so that I can do more interviews in person, like the one that you're listening today. It was in Laura's living room with herself and Henry the cat. So if you can donate, please do. It helps the podcast keep going, covers the overheads, and hopefully for next season, as this is the penultimate episode, it will allow me to go and meet people and do more podcasts in person. Now to today's episode. Myself, Henry the cat and Laura, let's all have a good chat. So welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thanks very much, Jack.
How you doing? You alright?
Yeah, I'm alright, yeah. Just one of those days. Just chilling at home with my cat.
I was going to say, more importantly, how's Henry doing? Henry the cat, who's with us today, our third guest.
Yes, Henry the cat. He's
got his back to me.
he's often quite rude. He goes between being very sweet and then being incredibly rude and obnoxious.
Come on, Henry.
Come on.
You're coming up.
He's a little chatterbox, though.
Oh, I know, yeah. I know, I'm going to be slagging you off for the next hour.
I'm going to be defending you mildly.
This is the courtroom, isn't it? This is, as we go through.
I can't completely defend him.
So some listeners might have listened before. I did a previous podcast called Cats Are Cunts. Sorry, Henry. And this is Cats Are Cunts, the sequel. But I thought rather than me just ranting on my own, we would get Laura Turner in. So Laura, you're here today because you're obviously into wildlife gardening and you host the YouTube channel Wildlife Garden Project.
Yeah.
But you've also got this little fluff ball.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a juxtaposition,
It is.
Some might say as well.
Yeah.
So before we get into the three main points, which are, as a cat owner, what can other cat owners do to minimise impacts? If you're a gardener wanting to keep cats out, what can you do? And then how do you give wildlife a chance? I think the first thing is, do you find like a weird juxtaposition, obviously being so into wildlife gardening and this dude?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah. It's really difficult. It's one of those subjects, isn't it, that's just so controversial. I have got a cat and a wildlife garden, and those two really don't mix well at all. But I'm quite lucky. He's quite an old boy. I didn't sort of choose to get a cat. I kind of inherited a cat. I obviously love him dearly.
I was just about to say, you do obviously, you like him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very fond of this little guy, and he brings me a lot of joy. Apart from when he brings me morbid little gifts.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not something that it's you can't sort of justify it really. But that's how we.
And this is it. A lot of cat owners. I mean, like. Okay, let's start upsetting people early on. A lot of cat owners are, for lack of a better word, batshit crazy. I'm not saying that you are.
Thank you.
But like, just some of the stuff they come out with. In particular, the one that gets me is like, oh, he's brought me a present. It's a little present. And I'm like, if I had a Rottweiler and it brought me a deer, I'd be worried. So,
I know, do you not know me at all?
Yeah.
Do a bit of research.
Slightly impressed. But yeah, but I do get that. Like, you obviously do care for him a lot. And I always joke about cats, but I would just want to make this abundantly clear. It's not that I hate cats. I do like cats. And Henry has got a lot of personality, haven't you, Henry? Oh, yes. See, he's defending himself. But it's what cats do, and it's how we as responsible cat owners can minimise that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about reducing the chance of predation. There's not really a huge amount you can do about it. They're cats. They've got these instincts, and if you're going to let your cat outside, there's only so much you can do. But there are things you can do.
So, well, let's talk about that then. So, like, for what you do and maybe would advise other cat owners, what can they do to kind of reduce or ideally stop them predating on wildlife?
So the first thing that I did with Henry was I invested in a gigantic bell.
Oh, that's what, yeah, okay.
So it kind of sounds like Santa is visiting year round.
Yeah.
And with how loud it is. I'll see if I can demonstrate.
That's what a bell sounds like, in case no one knows what a...
That is the sound of Christmas year round, whenever he scratches or moves.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you obviously could get a bell on a collar, but they're kind of quite small. And cats apparently can kind of change their movements to, make it so that the bell doesn't make any sounds.
Is that right? They actually compensate.
They can compensate.
They're
say
sneaky fuckers,
they
aren't they?
Really are. They really
Henry,
are.
what are you doing? But to be fair, like, he's been walking around. Like, I'm not hearing it. Is he hearing it? Little like, Henry, come here. Okay, this is why cats. Come on. You can hear it a little bit. You can hear it a little bit. All right, then you've just made me look like a dickhead, then, Henry, haven't you?
But certainly any running or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true.
You will definitely hear it. But yeah, that was so I replaced the bell that came with the collar and with that big one. So that's the first thing you can do, and that just obviously helps alerts.
Big loud bell.
Yeah, alert wildlife. That's kind of one of the simple things you can do. You can also sort of make sure that they're well fed. You should be doing that anyway if you in any way care about your animal.
Does Henry cheat on you? Do you know if he goes any other houses for a little snack?
Well, I mean, I guess you'll never know. I'll always question whether he cheats on me. But he doesn't go very far at all. As you saw when you came round, I shouted at him and there he was. He's a homeboy. He spends a lot of time indoors and he spends a lot of time just in the garden. So I don't think he does a whole lot of cheating. So
I've got one of my mates in London, Darren's got 3 cats, and he struggles because he lets his cats out, and a lot of his neighbours they don't own cats themselves, but they feed everyone's cats, and that really, really frustrates him as a cat owner, because then his cat's eating all kinds of stuff, and it's encouraging it to stay away from home, which, I mean, I get that the people feeding those cats, they're probably thinking, oh, that cat's hungry, or they might think it's a stray, but obviously it's really frustrating.
I made that mistake some years ago when a cat came to this house and was absolutely squawking his guts out, like so loud, and it was a really hot day, and I thought, well, I'll just offer some water because it's a really hot day, and he absolutely lapped it up. And then he kept squawking, and but that's what they do. As you say, they're clever little fuckers, and they know exactly how to manipulate you.
They're very stubborn animals.
And I weakened and gave him a little bit of cat food just because I thought he was quite a small cat, and I was like, maybe he is a stray, maybe he's starving. And then the next day he came back with this bright collar on saying, do not feed me. I was like, right, lesson learned there. So whether he had an allergy or something, or
maybe.
I don't know.
Just shat all over their house.
That is a hard way to learn a lesson.
I suppose that's another point. If you do have a cat, I mean, we mentioned the bell thing anyway, but have a collar on it. You should have because then there's no
well fitted.
Yeah, you're not worried that it is a stray because you can see the collar. So maybe that's another good point as well. I suppose. Like a bright collar as well. I mean, to be fair, like Henry's not going to blend in. He's not.
He's mainly white with a few black bits, and he's not unless it's snowing. He's pretty easy to spot.
Which I guess that must help wildlife as well a little bit. Like they can see him coming normally.
I think so.
What about the whole? Because I think the trouble with cats, if you've not got an indoor cat, because obviously the ideal thing is to have an indoor cat.
Yeah.
So, and this will be an interesting point. So I'm not attacking you, but why do you let Henry out? Why don't you have him indoors?
Partly because, I mean, he was already quite old when I got him. He was probably, I was told, about 15.
Okay.
And which probably makes him, that was 5 years ago. So he's a really old boy.
Oh, he's 20 plus then? Potentially.
I mean, assuming he was 15.
Okay.
They don't really know. But yeah, he is an old boy. And he's always gone outside. And I think that is the difficulty for a lot of cat owners, is they know that their cat, for its well-being, like, it wants to be like any other creature. It wants to be able to go outside, it wants to smell things, see things, and all the rest of it, and explore and have a bit of adventure. And so it's, people let their cats out so their cats can be happy, essentially.
That's what they want to do.
That's what they want to do. And people have, like you say, there are some cats who just are fine being indoors, and in that case, obviously, that's the ideal solution. Some people put up cat enclosures, don't they? Have you seen those things where they sort of build...
I'm going to come on to that. But yes, so that is another good option.
If you've got the money and the space, and
exactly,
you're not renting and all of those things. That is an option for some people. But I think for everybody else, I think there is a sort of halfway ground of saying, right, he can go out or they can go out, but it's about when you let them out. So I don't have a cat flap, for example, so he only goes out when I let him out.
You have to let him out, yeah. Okay.
And so he doesn't go out at all at night. They say don't let them out in sunrise and sunset, because of course, that's when they're feeling the most hunty. And of course, that's when birds and things are most active. So if you can kind of keep them in, and of course during breeding season, if you spot baby birds around, of course keep them in. So that's one easy way of.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, if your cat's always been let out and then you suddenly keep it in, it's gonna play up. I mean, cats don't like being told what to do.
Not at all.
So I don't know what the easy solution is. I mean, it's easy for me because I don't have a cat. I just say keep it indoors, but then I don't have to live for the consequences of a pissed off cat.
Won't get any work done.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose if you're gonna get a kitten, if you can keep it indoors, then it doesn't know any better, does it? And that's a good option. But if you are gonna let it out, as you say, if you're not prepared to keep it indoors because of your lifestyle or because of the cat or whatever, at least keep them indoors at night and in the morning and the evening. I think that's a very fair point.
It's a compromise, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I think that's a really fair point.
Yeah, because ultimately you do have a responsibility to make sure your cat's well-being is looked after, but of course you have a responsibility to reduce any harm that it's going to do to wildlife.
I think so. The only other thing I've got that I was going to mention, although I imagine a lot of cat owners will recoil when I suggest this, is cutting their claws. Now, I'm not saying like removing the knuckle or anything crazy like that, but you can cut cat claws. They're just like dog claws. Like, it's just keratin. It's the same stuff we have. And obviously, if they don't have sharp claws, it stops them climbing fences as easily, and it also stops them being as efficient in... But I imagine most cat owners will be like, oh, I can't do that. I would never do that. But like, you could. And also, I would not fancy trying to cut a cat's claw. I imagine if you grab Henry...
We have tried this claw, and it's horrific. It's... You don't... Because I think this... I mean, just from Googling it, there's a certain point where they will feel it. And knowing where that is,
I know.
It's absolutely terrifying.
I mean, I imagine you could probably take them to the vets. I'm not suggesting if people, because you don't want to hurt the cat, obviously. So, like because I cut my dog's claws, but I take a minuscule amount off because I don't do too much. Because I mean, they whine like hell anyway when I do it. But you don't want to hurt them. But that's another thing potentially that people could do. But I imagine most cat owners go, I'm not doing that. Do my cat claw. But I don't know if there's any other points or if you think we've covered it for those.
Well, one thing that I did have sort of read about in the past was just playing with your cat. So that's almost, like those big sticks with a feather on the end and let them chase it, all those laser pointers that some people have. What I read was that can kind of... It almost kind of satisfies that instinct to hunt. So let them kind of play with them, tease them for a bit, let them catch it, give them a treat, and that can, for some cats, just satisfy that instinct. And of course, all cats are different anyway, and some just aren't asked about anything. And some won't hunt at all, and some hunt because they're hungry, and some hunt because they're bored. They're all just they're all completely different. But
I think that's an interesting point because different cats have different prey drives. So some are just relentless, and then others, like, you'll see birds all around them and they're not even bothered. So I mean, I'm sort of painting all cats with the same brush, but that's not perhaps fair because some cats just aren't arsed, and then others are just like, I'm going to get you. So.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some sweet ones and there's some bastards.
There's a few out there.
There are.
So I think that's all sound advice for from one cat owner to other cat owners. So let's put your gardening hat on.
Okay.
And we'll do the wildlife gardening. I have got a quote here. I'm going to read it out quickly as well about cats. So this was from Germany. So one of the last homes of the ground nesting crested lark. Do you know that? I've never heard that bird before. The local district is eager to protect the 3 remaining breeding pairs. There's literally 6 of these birds left. So consequently, they've ordered residents to lock their cats indoors over the summer for the next 3 years or face hefty fines of €500. If a cat is caught outside, how much do you think they'll get fined?
€5,000.
50,000. Not even, yeah, €50,000 because it's of an endangered lark.
Right.
So that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, crikey. Imagine
that is one way of doing it.
Enforced all over the whole country,
Exactly,
just in general.
Yeah.
The Fennec, yeah.
You'd bankrupt Laura, wouldn't you, Henry?
No, he's staying in.
Yeah.
50 grand, he's staying in.
Okay, so gardening. So let's say that you're not a cat owner, or maybe you do have a cat, but it stays in or whatever, but you want to keep cats out of your garden. This is the $1 million question. How do we keep cats, or discourage them at least, from our gardens?
Well, so, I mean, one of them, if this is something that is really bothering you and you want to kind of go to the extreme, then obviously those fences, the ones that kind of come in that they can't get over, is, that is extreme. There are ways to just make your garden unappealing. So prickly bushes, or, sometimes they're looking for a litter tray. And their soil
yes,
acts like a litter tray, as it sounds like you well know.
Yes, they are.
So instead of having bare soil, making sure that that there's things covering it. So whether it's twigs or pine cones or holly cuttings or whatever, and make that soil unappealing to them.
One of my neighbours actually has one of those fences for cats because they've got 3 indoor cats, so they don't let their cats go out the garden, but they can go in the house and they can roam in the garden. So it keeps their cats in for the most part, and it keeps other cats from getting in. But that, as far as I know, and we'll kind of cover this as we go through different things, that is the only way to completely foolproof keep cats out. All other ways are sort of like they marginally work, is what I found.
Depending on the cat.
Depending on the cat as well, but also not all gardens you're going to be able to do that with. So it's like, because where I live, in the village that I live in, they're all kind of terraced old miners' houses. So the fences are all very square, they're all big fences. So it's very easy to put an overlapping bit of mesh to stop cats getting in and out. But if you've got a big country garden or small enclosed gardens, that's going to be tough to do. So
or if you're renting and your landlord or lady doesn't want you to make any changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it, but it's not perhaps viable for everyone. And your garden ends up looking like Guantanamo Bay. It doesn't look very nice. No. So there is that as well.
The RSPB, this is something I've only just found out about.
Okay. Hit
me. So the RSPB, they've got a recommendation on their website for a cat watch cat deterrent. So it's a small device that emits a high pitched sound, which is apparently disliked by most cats but inaudible to humans. And the frequency is just unique to cats' hearing range.
Okay, so it won't bother other wildlife.
Okay. So that's endorsed by the RSPB.
Okay.
So that presumably means that it's being well tested. But if I guess for someone who is really having problems with cats, that might be worth looking into.
Yeah, because I remember a couple of years ago I did post because when I first moved into my house, I did have real issues with cats shitting in my garden and coming in regularly. And I've sort of reached an equilibrium with the local cats. We all have an understanding. We all have you walk along the back of my fence, I can accept that. Just don't come in my garden.
Right.
And
maybe they're shaking your broom.
Yeah. Well, they'll look at me and they'll kind of give a little wink, and I'll look at them and I'll shake my fist, and we generally leave it at that. But so many people suggested stuff like lion shit and orange peel and lavender plants. And, human pea is meant to be really good, which I pea in my compost heap anyway because it's good for compost.
It is, yeah.
But just for everyone to know that. But like, I always think with these sort of scent deterrents, how do you know it works on every... It might work on one cat maybe, but does it work for every cat? I don't know. They all seem very anecdotal. I don't know the science behind any of those. Yeah. They all seem very anecdotal, whereas what you're saying with that noise thing, that maybe makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I suppose it's like those things that you get for teenagers outside co-ops. You know, those...
Is that the same thing?
I mean, yeah, I guess it must be similar, but on a different frequency.
Yeah, shotgun would work, wouldn't it?
Sorry?
A shotgun would work, really.
Shotgun. Jack, come on.
Teenagers are the next podcast. Sorry, go on. I'm going off on the tangent.
No. Yes, you are. Already talking about killing. So, yeah, they have these things. Well, I don't know if they still use them, but I remember a while back reading about them putting them outside like co-ops and Tesco Expresses and stuff.
You're right. Yeah.
To stop teenagers from loitering.
Yeah.
Hanging around being teenagers, and they emit this high pitched frequency that as you get older, you know, your hearing changes and you can't hear that anymore. But when you're a teenager, it's really annoying. It means that you don't want to hang around.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, so I wonder if it's a similar thing. I don't know.
It must be.
But
it must be.
You know, it's a frequency thing, isn't it? So
one of my favourite ones that people have suggested is you can get like a motion detected hose. So you can set this up. So say if you know where the cat's coming in, like there's a hole in the fence or a particular route, because all cats are creatures of habit, aren't they? They've all got their favourite little routes. You can set up this motion detector hose, and then when, you know, Felix comes around the corner, it'll just go and like get him in the face.
Henry jumps just at the sound of you doing that.
He knows. You know, don't you? You know the pain, don't you, Henry? Which again, like obviously, it doesn't. You know, it shocks the cat, and he's probably not going to do that route again. Whether it keeps them out permanently, I don't know, but I quite like that one. Or a lot of people suggested getting a super soaker as well and running out and chasing the cat and soaking it. But which I did do originally. I used to get a bucket of water and I'd chuck that on the neighbour's cat. God knows if the neighbours ever caught me doing it, because I got the first cat really well. It obviously didn't hurt it. But it was just sat on. It liked to sunbathe on my shed roof, and it was sat there. And I was like. And it's like came up for a little sniff, and then got the bucket of water. Went, have that, you bastard! Absolutely drenched it, and then it didn't go back. So I say we've got an understanding. Like it's probably just planning its revenge. It's going to get me at some point.
I think it will.
But yeah, that's another way. But now what happens is, as soon as I open my back door, the cat's gone. It knows that nothing good's going to come out of that back door, whether it's my dog's running out or whether it's me. So it's worked in a way. Like the cats don't come in my garden in the day now.
Right.
So you only
they're terrified of you.
Yeah. Well, look, it's fine. It's living a nice, happy life. But it now knows to keep out. So it's giving it a deterrent, I suppose, isn't it? In that regards.
I'm wondering though, since you said that, 'cause it sounds like you were getting a lot of cats in your garden, whereas I don't, and there are quite a lot of cats around here, and I've just thought maybe it's because I've got a cat.
Well,
you know,
you say
he's
that.
He loves people, as you've seen, but he hates other cats.
He's territorial,
and he's very fighty. You know,
is he?
He's very, very fighty if another cat comes in his territory. So, in a way, if he's keeping other cats out, better to have one old, aggressive cat, another cat that doesn't like other cats.
I mean, I suppose, like, it's an interesting point. Like, let's say that you have one cat with a low prey drive. That's going to be better if he's keeping other cats away than 4 or 5 cats that love killing.
You just don't know, though,
do you? It's pot luck, isn't it?
Yeah, you
exactly.
really don't know till you kind of...
It's an interesting point that you make. Definitely.
It's just something that I realised there, and that isn't something that I've just thought I don't get that many cats coming in.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're having more problem with cats than I do.
I was originally. I don't know if you remember, because for context, and I'm sure people have probably already gathered this, I've known Laura for years now. I came around maybe a couple of months ago. Do you remember I said that like I lost a lot of my frogs? There was a local bandit cat, and happened is it was actually one of the cats got out from my neighbour who keeps their cats indoors. It had found a way out, and over the course of maybe 3 weeks in October, it more or less wiped out the frogs in the garden. So I was heartbroken because I love my frogs, and I kept finding like bits of frog all over the garden. And I also keep frogs in an enclosure. It had got in there. I don't think it caught any, but I don't know till next spring, because I won't see them till then. But it's interesting how one individual cat can have a huge difference on a local ecosystem. So it's not even necessarily lots of cats. One cat can have a difference. Because as I said, I've got this understanding with the other local cats, and they're not they didn't really bother the frogs, But this new cat, or the cat that hadn't been allowed out before, it was just tearing through my frogs, and the neighbour patched up the hole in the fence, and then it's not been out since. So it was only on the loose, inverted commas, for a couple of weeks. But in that short amount of time, it did a lot of damage, which was pretty good. So it'll be interesting to see this. Remember, we're in February now. It'd be interesting to see next month how many frogs I get coming back to my pond. Hopefully, it's not took too many. But yeah, that did upset me a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. It is always upsetting though, and that's the thing. Like going back to what we were talking about before, you when you have a cat, you love that creature with,
Yeah.
And then to see them doing such evil,
Yeah.
well, then it's not evil, but you know what I mean, horrible, horrific things.
My family have got cats, and like I say, I always joke about cats, obviously, but I do like them. They are lovely. I would have a cat if I could work out how to keep it indoors but not shit in my house. Because cat shit's horrible. I can't stand the smell of cat.
You can toilet train a cat.
What? On
the toilet?
No, you can't.
No, I said if you could.
Oh, if you... Oh. I thought you were going to tell me Henry goes and has a dump and then flushes the loo, washes his hands, and
he did once go in the bath. He was alerting me in the morning that he needed a shit desperately, and he took a bit too long to coming round, and he was like, I can't wait anymore, and he jumped in the bath, shat in the bath. Is this where you wanted the podcast to go?
Yeah, definitely.
But you know what? I was so grateful to him. So it's like it was
if you're gonna,
one.
We've all
do it anywhere.
We've all been in this situation, haven't you? Where if you're gonna shit anywhere in the house other than the toilet, it's gonna be the bath, isn't it?
So I'm saying that's only one step away from toilet training. What the bath.
Keep at it.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, if we can work out how to train cats to crap in toilets, sign me up. I'll have a cat tomorrow. Not the bath, ideally. So yeah, is there anything else that you think then for keeping cats out, or do you think that's kind of covered it for any other bits? I think, as I say, it's just apart from the fencing, which, as we've said, isn't necessarily foolproof. I don't think there's any other way that guarantees keeping cats out. You just got to try and make it unappealing, haven't you? Like you said.
I think so. Yeah, just unappealing things, like we said, like prickly plants and stuff, and all the rest of it.
I suppose by the very nature of a wildlife garden, they're very attractive to cats, aren't they? If you've just got like AstroTurf and nothing else, then a cat's probably not going to spend a lot of time there. But if you've got like meadows and ponds and bushes and trees, the cat's going to be like, this is great.
Lots of stuff to explore.
Yeah.
Lots of creatures to watch and stalk. That's the problem, isn't it?
Exactly. A final point then, what can we do to give wildlife a chance then? If we are a wildlife gardener, we've got cats coming in, we can't keep them out at full 100%. What can we do to give the animals that are living in our garden half a chance?
Well, there's a few things you can do. So, if you are putting food out for birds, for example, that's sort of what people think of most when they think about cats. They worry about bringing the birds in on feeders. If you don't put food on the ground, because it makes them a very easy target. So put it somewhere a bit higher up, like on a bird table, or if you've got bird feeders, make sure they're not in pouncing distance from a wall or a fence or a branch or something. And you can also sort of spread them out. So because if you've got lots of birds in one place, they're kind of a bit more of an easy target. Whereas if you've got your bird feeders sort of spread out and you've got flocks of birds coming in, that's more eyes sort of watching out for predators. So the cat's sort of more likely to be spotted than if you've got, weirdly enough, if you've got more birds, because more eyes sort of spot them.
That makes sense.
And the same with nest boxes and things. Make sure that's not within reach. A cat can't jump to it or reach his paw in or anything like that.
Lots of hiding places, I suppose. Like, if your garden's pretty open and bare, think about a rockery or a loggery or some shrubs or just things where animals have got somewhere to flee and hide to.
Yeah, long grass and all those sorts of things. Leaf piles, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think I know some people have sort of said, well, look, I'm not going to do anything for wildlife because, I don't want the cats. I don't want to attract wildlife in and then have the cat.
It's depressing, really. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, it is. It really is. But I think, even if you've seen attacks happening around bird feeders and you don't want to put bird feeders out, fine, that's absolutely fine. But there's still plenty of other things you can do for wildlife. There's nothing to stop people from having a wildlife friendly garden. So all of the basics of wildlife gardening, like planting some pollinator friendly plants, stopping from don't use pesticides, let your lawn flower, keep some long bits, lots of sort of habitats like we said, like leaf piles, log piles, that's all sort of great for invertebrates. And sorry, Henry.
You was going to chime in there.
You got something to say? So it's all that stuff is really good for invertebrates, and of course all the creatures that eat those invertebrates, including birds. So it's about sort of thinking what else can you do?
There's always something you can do.
There's definitely always a way you can make your garden more wildlife friendly.
My garden at the minute doesn't have many trees or shrubs. I have got them growing, but it takes time. So where I've got my bird table at the minute is next to a tree, but it's right next to my fence as well. And what used to happen was one of the cats would just sit on the fence and watch the birds. So what I've now got, which sounds nastier than they are, but cat spikes. But they're plastic, like they don't impale cats. People are going to think that I'm putting cats on spikes. It's just like these plastic spikes, and you can press your hand on, and it doesn't. It's just uncomfortable. Like cats are not going to sit somewhere if it's uncomfortable. So there's things like that you can do, which look extreme, but they're not. They're not quite as bad as well. And I will admit, having 2 dogs does help.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should mention dogs because I'm going to get people going, "You didn't talk about dogs." Okay. Dogs aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Dogs are a problem as well. The difference is that we are generally under control of dogs. I don't think dogs should be allowed on nature reserves. I've seen so many horrible videos online of dogs flushing birds on beaches, and so I think that if you are going somewhere like that, either don't take your dog, or at the very least keep it on a lead. If you're going to walk your dog where you want to let it run, maybe go to like an open playing field or somewhere where there's not like stuff for it. Exactly. There's always somewhere you can take your dog. So dogs aren't perfect. I'm not saying that dogs are perfect, but the really easy, simple solution is just keep your dog on the lead, and it's sort of it's done. It's the dog owner. It's not the dog, which is you could argue it's the cat owner, not the cat. But I'm not going to pull that thread too much for this. So you do have to be careful with dogs as well. But I do think, like, can cats and wildlife gardens coexist? I think there is an equilibrium to a degree.
Yeah. Well, I think there kind of has to be because I don't know how many people own cats in the UK, but we're a nation of cat lovers, aren't we? And I don't think you can kind of say.
Oh, I know. I get loads of them messaging me, telling me how much they don't like what I've got to say. And I imagine after this goes out, a few of them will probably voice their opinion.
All the hate.
Yeah. You're going to be the hero. They're going to have fucking jumpers with Laura and Henry.
There's the people who hate cats who
that's true. They'll have me like with a bloody club in my hand or something.
We've got to. I mean, unless we bring in some rules like the one you mentioned earlier with £50,000 fines, people are going to have cats. They're going to be letting them outside.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the things you do in the garden, I think it's I guess you've got to sort of. It's a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? Kind of weighing up the benefits of attracting wildlife to your garden. Yes, there is a risk that some of that will become victim to these evil bastards, but overall, there should be a huge benefit to wildlife overall.
I think so. I think it's worth noting as well because I was reading up on the RSPB and they did say that even though cats take something like 20 million birds, something like that, there's no evidence to suggest that cats are solely the cause of decline, and the vast majority of those are already sick or injured.
That's what they say. Yeah.
So it's not ideal, but it's not like cats are wiping out all British birds. They have wiped out birds in other countries, but not in the UK.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they were saying, was it blue tits? I think is the second most predated on species in the UK by cats, but they are. Then they're the opposite of decline. They're on the increase. So but that's not to say cat. I mean, of course, cats are of course they're going to have an impact on population, but there isn't any evidence whether that's because it's it isn't the case or whether it's because the studies haven't been done. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think we just have to put measures in place because we know that those deaths happen.
I think the rather unhelpful answer for this, if you're listening to this trying to find a solution, is that every garden is different, every cat's different, and some people might have 10 cats in their area but they don't have a lot of problems, and some people might have 1 cat and it's get a lot of problems with that. So hopefully you can sort of take on board what we've said and get some use out of it and go through that. But let's take a step away from cats for a moment and talk about what you do. So if anyone is into wildlife gardening in the UK, they've probably Googled it on YouTube, well, searched it on YouTube, and they might have come across the Wildlife Garden Project, which is obviously your brainchild.
Yes.
You came up with. So how did that all come about?
Well, it was quite a long time ago now. It was 2010. Originally, I wanted to make a film about wildlife, and it ended up being that I got into wildlife gardening because I was so frustrated with the state of the planet and felt very useless. And wildlife gardening felt like something that, this is something you can actually do something about,
Yeah.
This is a way to help kind of conserve species and give them a little helping hand. And that's why I got into it, really. Didn't know anything about wildlife gardens. I'd only just got my first garden at that point. And I just, basically created the Wildlife Garden Project. I'm a filmmaker, that's my job. So I made films about wildlife gardening, so tutorial films on how to do everything, like sowing a wildflower meadow or building a bird box or whatever. And it's just kind of grown from there, really.
Some of them have got quite a lot of. I mean, you've got a pretty good average on there, haven't you? Like they've got a fair amount of views, haven't they?
Some of them have. The most popular one, funnily enough, is the hedgehog one because everybody loves hedgehogs.
Yeah, they do.
And I've had a good fair number of views. Obviously, the ones with you in
well, that's
less
natural,
so.
isn't it? Of course, the ones with me are going to do really well.
Yeah, no, they have done pretty well. Those ones actually, people still do seem to like you for some reason.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a mystery. It's a mystery.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's going well. We recently became a community interest company, which means we're an actual official entity rather than just something I was doing in my spare time.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 directors on board, so the wonderful Tina Lindsay and Tom Shields. And yeah, between us, we're just sort of trying to spread the word. We just want every garden to be a wildlife garden.
Yeah,
essentially.
as it should be. Yeah,
fighting against the barren, sterile,
yeah.
fake lawns and all the
Oh
rest of
God,
it. Essentially.
don't the old. Do you follow Shit Lawns?
Yes,
Yeah, it's so good, isn't
it's
it?
brilliant.
It's bloody good.
And awful at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
Heartbreak.
Tell us about your wildlife garden.
Well, it's
It's not a typical one, is it? Like obviously, like people might expect you to have like open the windows and it's just like a paradise of flowers and deer.
If I had time. No, it's very much a kind of, you do what you can, don't you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I dug a pond in during lockdown, which I probably need your advice on because it's looking a bit sorry for itself. And, planted various things. We get badgers visiting, which is
That's
lovely.
pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And because where you, I mean, obviously won't tell people exactly where you live because, we don't want people coming around, but you're relatively close to the city centre, aren't you? In Nottingham.
Yeah, it's really a really urban area. I kind of looked out with this house really because it's, on a road where there are a lot of sort of courtyard gardens.
Yeah.
And this one has got for the size of the house, like a relatively big garden.
Yeah.
Lots of sort of hedges and stuff like that. And
do you see the badgers then? Have you actually looked out the window?
I've put camera traps out.
Yeah.
So we knew they were there because there was more evidence of them digging and all the rest of it.
They're not conspicuous, are they, badgers?
No. But occasionally, if you're in the summer and if you're out there at night, if you're just down here and you're quiet, they will be sniffing around up because it's a kind of raised garden. You can kind of come out the lower bit, and then you can kind of see the badgers up there. That's like sniffling around. So put peanut butter sandwiches out for them.
I might come round.
Yeah, you can come round, do some badger watching.
Yeah. No, for the sandwiches, I'll come round.
Oh, right.
Not bothered about the badgers. Want a sandwich?
Yeah, I can make you a butty now.
Oh, ace. Okay, it's worth coming. Does Henry? Have you seen Henry interact with the badgers at all?
No.
I think he'd clear off. He wouldn't be interested.
Run a mile, I think.
Yeah, okay.
He's generally, as I say, not out at night, so.
Of course, you said
yeah. But I imagine, I don't think he'd have much of a chance up against a badger. To be fair, and I think he knows it.
Yeah, I think I don't know much about badgers. Whether they would, I don't think they'd attack a cat. I think they'd sort of just be like, "What's that?" And I don't think they'd have a go.
I don't think so. I think it would be, I think it would be more if Henry was being a bit too interested and
a cat would get out of the way.
Bothering them. Then
cats would get out of the way. They're not daft, are they?
No,
they wouldn't hang around.
No.
Well, I'm glad that we've completely cleared up the issue of
Yeah,
cats and-
completely. Everyone's going to know exactly what to do now.
everyone will know. But hopefully this has given people ideas anyway, and a relatively balanced viewpoint of it all. So
You've held back.
I have held back massively. No, I haven't. I think we've been good. But I've been wanting to get you on for ages, so it was nice to sort of talk about this and cover it. And obviously star guest Henry, who's now gone to sleep,
Yeah.
more or less.
So,
Fed up.
get any noises out of him.
He's just
he's
thinking,
sleeping.
I've had enough of this lanky wanker in my living room. As he's nodding off. Well, look, anyway, thanks for coming on, Laura.
Thanks for having me.
That was Laura Turner. I've been wanting to get Laura on the podcast for ages because I absolutely love the work that Laura does. She's very talented in producing these videos. So if you've not checked out the Wildlife Garden Project on YouTube, you should definitely go and have a look at that and subscribe to it. I thought I was quite well behaved on that. I think if you're a cat lover and you've listened to this, I could have probably gone a lot harder, but I didn't want to reduce Laura to tears. No, Laura's a lot tougher than I am. I think, yeah, we had a good chat. We were pretty sensible about it. And yeah, I agree with everything that Laura says. And I know that I joke about cats, but I do like cats. They're not terrible. They're not all terrible anyway. I just like to kind of lay into people who like cats because I think it's quite funny. So you should definitely check out the Wildlife Garden Project. I do get asked occasionally, do I listen to any other podcasts? And seeing as we're talking about wildlife gardening, I would highly recommend that you check out the Wildlife Garden Podcast, which isn't anything to do with Laura, it's just similar names, and that is run by Ben and Ellie, Belly, the power couple behind wildlife podcasting. They're really lovely people. Their podcast is absolutely fantastic. There aren't many podcasts that I listen to, if I'm honest, but I think they really hit up the right kind of go-between of information, good chemistry. They're not trying to be too overtly funny. They're just naturally good with each other. So I really do like that podcast, and I do tune into a few episodes of theirs. The other podcast I'd recommend is How Many Geese by Jack Badams and I want to say Roddy. I can't remember the other guy's name. That's a really good podcast. Lots of research, lots of really interesting facts. Love that. They're really the only two wildlife podcasts I listen to on any regular basis. I shouldn't really do myself out of listeners. Please don't leave me. But they are very, very good podcasts as well. Now, if you can, what would really, really help the podcast out is if you could leave us a review. It's a simple thing. I know it takes a couple of minutes, a bit fiddly, but wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes or Amazon, wherever you listen to them, a quick, short review, ideally positive, would be amazing because that really, really helps us in the search rankings. And obviously share it around, tell all your friends, send it to your gran. Whoever wants to listen to this podcast, the more listens, that helps us out. Now, as I mentioned before, this is the penultimate episode. We've got next week's episode, which is with the UK Sturgeon Alliance. What a name for a group. And we're going to be talking about the reintroduction of sturgeon. Then we will be pretty much out for the rest of the year and hopefully back in the winter. I might release the odd episode here or there. We'll see how it goes. Basically, I'm absolutely chocker this year, which I shouldn't moan about. It's good to be busy. But I've got 2 books to write. I've got a big film that I've been working on for the last 3 years, Britain Hidden Fishers. That's out this year. I'm working on my YouTube channel. And I would recommend, if you do want to kind of keep up with what I'm doing, then subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Jack Perks Wildlife Media, because I upload to that pretty regularly, twice a week. And I do stuff to camera and voiceover as well. So kind of podcasty a little bit. So you can keep up with all that stuff. But yeah, this is the penultimate one. So still got flu. Hopefully you'll all enjoy this season. You like the season format. I think it's what I'm going to do next year as well. I'm going to do another kind of block of 20-ish episodes. I think I've gone over 20 this year, but 20-ish episodes. I might change it slightly. I've got a couple of ideas of things to do, but I have for the most part enjoyed coming back. So I'll see you next week, hopefully, for the last episode. This has been the Bearded Tits Podcast. I've been your host, Jack Perks, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Oh, God, that was a horrendous way to end, wasn't it? Cheers.